He is remembered as a savior. Crow, the leader of the adventurer guild known as Nightmare, stands resolute against a brilliant sky. This sentiment is shared by many of his companions. A woman with white hair gratefully states that he saved her life, too. A small girl named Yuma joyfully exclaims her love for her nii, while another woman with purple hair remarks on their master's virtuous character. The praise continues as a man with spiky hair declares there is no one as good as their master. Beside him, a blonde woman in a suit winks, adding that he is truly worthy of her loyalty. She looks toward the masked leader, confirming her thoughts aloud. Yes, she affirms, Yashinai Crow is everything they say he is. The chorus of adoration becomes overwhelming. The blonde woman proclaims him the world's greatest guild leader, a statement the white-haired woman readily agrees with. Caught in the middle, Yashinai Crow throws his hands over his head, desperately pleading for them to stop. The scene shifts to a quiet, sunlit office. A maid with long pink hair attends to a task while, across the room, a young man sits at a large desk, engrossed in his work. He now wears his familiar mask, even in the privacy of his office. Leaning back in his chair, he reads a document, his attention caught by a newspaper headline announcing the return of the guild Nightmare. He pauses, silent. His fingers trace the printed words on the page as he contemplates the article before him. The newspaper features a large photograph of his masked persona alongside his most prominent guild members. The headline praises the super attractive adventurer guild Nightmare and promises a deep dive into their popularity. His hand clenches slightly. He reads on, scanning the public's comments. They praise a tavern clerk named Lulu-san for her beauty, a merchant supplier named Yuma-tan for being an angel, and a priestess named Horisama for her politeness. One student speculates that the masked man must be handsome. The article concludes by noting the funny contrast between the guild's fearsome name and its members' attractive faces. He lets out a heavy sigh, a sound that immediately draws the attention of the pink-haired maid preparing coffee nearby. She turns, concern on her face, and calls out his name, Crow-sama. She approaches, placing a cup of coffee on an ornate tray before him. Crow-sama, she begins, is there something worrying you? He confirms her suspicion, admitting that there is. With earnest devotion, she introduces herself as Fell Souls, rank 4 of the Nightmare Guild. She insists that he consult with her, declaring that for the sake of her master, she would do anything. His gaze meets hers as he poses a startling question. He asks Fell, hypothetically, what she would do if he were to leave the guild. The question hangs in the air. Fell clarifies if he means he is truly considering leaving, and he confirms it. She falls silent, contemplating her response to such a possibility. Her expression shifts into a serene, almost beatific smile. Holding up a small, glinting knife, she states with chilling certainty, I will die. The declaration strikes him with absolute horror. His face contorts, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief at her words. As she begins to put the knife away, she calmly tells him not to cherish his life. He pleads with her, insisting he cannot accept that and begging her to put the weapon down. With eyes closed, Fell explains her logic. Her life belongs to him, so if he no longer wants it, it is only natural she should die. The thought appalls him. He has never heard of such a thing and wants no part in holding another's life. At that moment, he feels a small tug on his sleeve. The child, Yuma, is looking up at him, calling him Nianai. She asks what's wrong, her own eyes welling with tears. Yumalama Fagla, rank 1 of Nightmare, has overheard the conversation and is now distraught at the very idea of her Nianai quitting the guild. She begins to wail, her face contorted in distress. A panicked Crow tries to calm her, stammering that his words were only hypothetical. Her distress escalates as she lunges forward, grabbing onto him tightly. She shouts that she doesn't want her Nianai to leave, repeating the sentiment over and over while crying. Caught off guard, he tries to calm her, pointing out that her flailing is hurting her pigtails. Realizing the depth of her fear, he immediately apologizes, admitting it was his fault and promising he will never make such a joke again. Through her tears, she asks if he really means it. Her gaze turns sharp and unervingly intense. She stares directly into his eyes and makes a demand. No more lying, and no leaving her, just like her papa did. Observing the scene from nearby, Fell smiles softly. She notes to herself that Yuma enjoys being spoiled, but wonders if this particular issue should be addressed with more than just indulgence. A short while later, the mood has calmed. Crow sips from a teacup while gently patting a now beaming Yuma on the head. He reflects internally that, with time, his guild members will learn to distinguish between his jokes and his serious statements. His attention shifts to the larger group as he addresses the assembled members of Nightmare. He tells them not to worry about the earlier conversation, reiterating multiple times that it was simply a joke. In response, Lulu glances at a nearby clock, its hands pointing to 10. She confirms that all 10 of them are now present and declares that it is time to begin the meeting. Taking charge of the proceedings, the guild's rank 2 member, Lilisilanites, stands. Acknowledging Crow's command, she prepares to begin, announcing that the agenda for the day is a dungeon quest. The announcement draws varied reactions from the other high-ranking members. Rank 8, Garga, scoffs that it isn't his kind of job. Rank 7, Almeria Royce, expresses her disgust at the thought of smelly, dirty enemies. Meanwhile, Rank 3, Lofia Flight, sighs with weary resignation, guessing their target is the rumored Goblin nest. Lilisilanites briefs the guild on the mission, explaining that while the targets are goblins, they have reportedly amassed a considerable amount of valuable items. At the head of the table, Crow raises his hand, volunteering for the task, and thanking Lulu for the information. She considers his offer, then wonders aloud who else will accompany him on the quest. Her question is met with an immediate and overwhelming response. The entire room erupts as nearly every member present, from the highest ranks down to young Yuma, shoots their hand into the air, shouting their desire to be chosen. A flurry of determined and eager faces fills the room, each one vying for the opportunity to join the mission. Crow observes the commotion, touching his chin in thought. He wonders if they're all worried about him, feeling confident that he can deal with the goblins by himself. His contemplation is abruptly broken as a figure suddenly kneels before his table, startling him. The man, identified as Horus, rank 8 of Nightmare, formally pleads to be taken on the quest. He declares with unwavering confidence that his loyalty will bring strength to the young master. Crow, taken aback, protests that he can go alone, but Horus's resolve is clear. Before he can argue further, Garga leaps into the fray, pointing emphatically and proclaiming that he will be the second person to go. He insists he is more worthy and suitable to accompany their master. From his kneeling position, Horus coolly tells Garga not to be a fool, while Crow watches, speechless. The two men lock eyes. Garga's face twists in fury as he demands to know why he isn't the obvious choice. Horus simply smirks, countering that it's obvious the young master wants to be with him instead. As Garga roars a challenge, vowing to be the one to protect their master from anything, Crow sips from his cup, internally wishing they would just stop fighting. He could only watch in shock as the escalating conflict between Horus and Garga erupted into a roaring inferno. The two men were instantly engulfed in flames, their bodies contorting as they screamed in agony. Their screams were cut short as a bladed staff flew through the air, extinguishing the blaze in a single pass. A firm voice declared the two of them noisy and ordered them to stop their petty dispute. The weapon belonged to Alicia Craze, rank 6 of the Nightmare Guild. She stood over the fallen men, her expression severe as she announced that they would be punished for their behavior. She then turned to Crow, her demeanor shifting completely. With a proud smile and flashing peace signs, she pointed out that she had helped him by stopping the two and that he should praise her for it. He obliged, placing a hand on her head and patting it gently. He called her a good girl, and she closed her eyes, clearly savoring the praise. Her visible delight sent a wave of intense jealousy through the other women watching. As Alicia declared how much she loves when her master does this, their expressions darkened, rumbling with silent fury. Emboldened, she leaned close to Crow, her eyes sparkling as she made a stunning declaration. This was why she would become his wife. She pointed at him, confidently stating that he was on her side. She continued, explaining that if she were to become his wife, she would accept everything about him. Another woman interjected that it would be hard, but Alicia was undeterred. To prove her point, she picked up a pair of cherries and licked them suggestively, promising to accept all of his lust and desires. She turned back to Crow, flashing another peace sign and declaring their marriage established. He could only stammer out a conditional agreement, saying it was okay only if that time ever came. Nearby, Lulu's entire body trembled with rage, the pencil in her mouth about to snap. A hand shoots up, and a cheerful voice asks if One-Ichan can also fill that position. A sudden interruption startles Crow. He wonders aloud if Lilicillanites also wants to join the quest. With a wink, Alicia Craze dismisses the idea, saying it's not about that, though it is related. Before he can react further, Lilicilla throws her arms around him, joyfully declaring that she also wants to be Crow's wife. The bold move leaves both Crow and Alicia completely stunned. She leans in close, whispering to the blushing Crow that she is perfectly fine with being the second wife. He immediately rejects the notion, stating firmly that he doesn't want any adulterous affairs. Their conversation is cut short by a loud slam. Lulu, her hand planted firmly on a surface, shouts that she does not approve. Lilicilla, however, cheerfully explains that it's fine because they live in a polygamous society, a revelation that catches Crow by surprise. Following her outburst, an awkward silence falls. Crow and Lilicilla turn to see Lulu now hunched over a desk, completely still and quiet. Elsewhere, another woman reacts to the news with utter disbelief. Clutching the mask over her mouth, her eyes are wide with shock as she thinks that she can't believe Crow would become a sex-crazed man, refusing to accept it. The escalating situation is brought under control by another guild member. He announces that they will conduct a rigorous selection process, and that Crow is to wait in his room until then. Obediently, Crow retreats into his room and closes the door. He slumps against the wall, utterly defeated. With a heavy sigh, he admits to himself that he really wants to quit this guild. A caption identifies him. Yashinai Crow, rank 10, the lowest rank in the Nightmare Guild. He feels pathetic. Despite being the leader, he can't understand why they would say such nice things about him, adding to his despair. He kneels alone in his room, feeling utterly defeated. It seems only natural to him, believing he is the weakest person alive, unable to even use the cheat skill bestowed upon him by a goddess. He moves to his desk, reflecting that his weakness isn't the only reason he wants to quit the guild. There's another, more personal reason. His eyes widen with anxiety as he clutches his mask, a feeling of insignificance washing over him. He stares at his reflection in the small mirror, lamenting what he sees as an unfortunate disappointing-looking face. This insecurity is a deep-seated complex, the very reason he always hides behind a mask. Because of it, his own companions have never even seen his true face. He thinks of his guildmates, a group filled with handsome and beautiful people. In his mind, there is no way he could ever fit in among them. Holding his mask, he feels devoid of talent and confidence, unworthy of even showing his face to his companions. He looks in the mirror once more, a bead of sweat trickling down his face as he questions himself. Is he really fit for the role of the world's greatest guild leader? His introspection is shattered by a sudden knock at the door. A young woman's voice calls out, asking if Crokowin is there and if she can come in. Startled, he instinctively covers his face, sweating with panic. Before he can fully react, the door flies open. Almeria Royce bursts in, striking a cheerful pose. She announces that she was chosen, declaring that the super pretty girl Alma-chan is here to take him on a date, which she calls a quest. Her sudden appearance is met with a sigh of relief from Crow, who realizes it's only Alma. He thinks to himself that he was nervous over nothing, though he immediately considers his own reaction to be quite mean. She immediately complains that he's treating her very poorly. Flustered, Almeria continues, saying she had thought his reaction was because he considered her someone close to him. As he walks past, she presses the point, asking if that means she is special to him. Crow glances back and casually agrees that he supposes so. He clarifies that they are special to each other as friends of the same age, since they are both 16. The clarification causes Almeria's hopeful expression to completely deflate. Turning away from her disappointment, Crow heads down a spiral staircase and sees two other women waiting below. One is in a wheelchair, and he seems to understand the situation, though he appears hesitant. One of the women is identified as Lofia Flight, an adventurer of rank 5 known by the title Nightmare. She sits quietly, her gaze distant. Now wearing his mask, he turns to Almeria, who has followed him, and asks if she is the only one coming with him. She confirms that she is. He processes this information as he walks down the final steps toward the waiting party. As he approaches, Lofia looks up and calls out his name. She seems startled by his presence, stammering his name as he addresses her directly, calling her Lafia. Before he can continue, another woman, Lulu, reassures him not to worry, explaining that her sister Lofia is always like this and apologizing for her behavior. Crow then turns back to Lofia and asks what she needs. She sat quietly at the table as Crow approached her directly. He extended an invitation, asking if she would be willing to go to the dungeon with him. His question hung in the air, but Almeria's earlier reaction echoed. She had been utterly bewildered, questioning why he would ask her, especially considering their recent outing together. Crow had simply confirmed her understanding. Now, in the present, Lofia felt his gaze intensely upon her. She recalled raising her hand earlier, just as Almeria had, yet she had remained mostly silent throughout the day. The direct attention made her heart pound. He offered a simple, reassuring explanation. He considered her a friend of the same age. The innocent kindness of his words sent Lofia spiraling into self-loathing, berating herself for daring to think he saw her as anything more. Crow, however, seemed to notice her extreme reaction, commenting on her excessive self-deprecation. His attempt to manage the situation with Almeria had been just as clumsy. As she slumped in defeat, he had stammered, trying to justify his decision by pointing out how reassuring it would be to have someone as reliable as Lofia with him. He now looked at Lofia with genuine concern, wondering if he had misread everything. He admitted that he had been hoping she would agree to come. His earnestness struck a chord within her. Overcome with a wave of emotion, she looked up, her face flushed, and assured him he was not wrong at all. With heartfelt sincerity, she declared that she would gladly accompany him. Her acceptance sent a jolt of excitement through Crow. He threw his fist in the air, triumphantly declaring that the three of them were now a party, ready to head to the dungeon. With Almeria and Lofia in tow, he turned and marched towards the door. As the door closed behind the trio, the room they left behind fell into a heavy silence. Lilicilla Knights and Alicia Craze remained seated, forgotten. Lilicilla stewed in quiet frustration while Alicia turned away, her arms crossed in silent disapproval. The silence stretched on, broken only by a single, lingering thought that hung in the air. A quiet, uncertain wonder about what was to come. In a quiet room, the young girl Yuma sits curled up, her expression downcast. She mutters to herself, consumed by a single fear. If Ernana leaves this place, she will be left all alone. Her quiet words, though barely spoken, ripple through the air, causing Fel, Alicia, Lilicilla, and Lofia to turn in unison, their faces etched with sudden shock and concern. Reacting instantly, Alicia approaches Yuma with a gentle expression. As Lilicilla watches in surprise, Alicia reassures the child that there's no need to worry, because their master will marry her. She then pulls Yuma into a comforting embrace, patting her head. Alicia promises that they are all in this together and will solve it as a group, adding that Yuma will become their adopted daughter. Nearby, Fel serves tea and remarks that she's glad Crow-sama is so insensitive to all the affection he receives, though she wonders if that's truly a good thing. Lilicilla sighs, thinking to herself that this is hardly a solution and that Crow must have his own intentions. Lilicilla's demeanor shifts entirely. With a sly, confident smile, she declares that Alicia, Lofia, and even Horace-chan are starting to make her angry, implying a friendly rivalry. Her playful challenge draws a stern response from Horace. He steps forward, clenching his fist, and demands that she refrain from leading their young master down a path of indecency. Lulicilla, looking slightly flustered, retorts that it can't be helped. Unfazed by his warning, Lulicilla addresses the entire guild gathered in the room. With unwavering confidence, she makes a grand declaration. Everyone in this guild loves Crochan very much. She brings a hand to her lips, a small, satisfied smile playing on her face as she tries to contain her triumphant feelings. Her complex emotional display is completely lost on Garga, who looks utterly bewildered. He questions what could possibly be wrong with everyone liking the master, thinking it's a good thing. Lulicilla's voice cuts in, telling him it's something he can't understand and that he should just be quiet. He remained on the floor, utterly bewildered by the turn of events. Stepping forward, Horus asserted his authority as the sub-leader, declaring that Crow had merely been joking. He commanded that the discussion end immediately, demanding to know if he was understood. As Horus attempted to restore order, Lulicilla sat quietly, holding her teacup. She softly murmured Crow's name, a thoughtful expression on her face, before adding a drawn-out yes. She turned her gaze towards the window, reflecting on Crow's nature. He was such a strange person, she thought, and yet he was cherished so deeply by all of them. Her thoughts then soured, a flash of frustration crossing her face. She couldn't understand why he never seemed to notice their feelings for him. The memory of a past incident surfaced, a story about a noble girl whose entire family had been murdered. The memory brought tears to her eyes. There had been a grudge against the girl's family, and she recalled how some of the other pretentious nobles seemed to relish in her suffering. In that moment of despair, a hand reached out to her. It was Crow. He was the only one who had ever reached out to her, a girl who had lost all hope in the world. And he had saved her not once, but 9 times. This was why, for her and the others who had been abandoned by the world, Crow was their only hope and light. He was the self-proclaimed ugly leader of their guild and their savior. And for that very reason, her devotion twisted into a fierce, possessive resolve. She would never, ever let him go, no matter what it took. This was the story of 9 guild members whose adoration for their leader bordered on worship, a fine line between love and madness. Under the light of a full moon, 3 adventurers approached the dark, gaping entrance of a cavern. The heavy thud of their armored footsteps echoes in the quiet of the night. Inside the stone passage, the group comes to a halt. Crow, flanked by Lofia and Almeria, stands ready, their expressions grim as they peer into the darkness ahead. In the shadows, their quarry reveals itself. A pack of grotesque goblins, their sharp-toothed maws twisted into vicious sneers. Without hesitation, Lofia leaps forward, telling Crow to watch her. Her spear becomes a blur, carving a wide arc through the horde and felling several goblins in a single, fluid motion. Crow looks on, slightly surprised by her ferocity. Amidst the chaos, Almeria calls out with a bright smile, urging them to witness her own greatness as she engages the remaining creatures. Suddenly, Crow spots 2 goblins escaping down a corridor and shouts a warning. A moment later, a distant, piercing scream echoes from that direction. Almeria returns, a faint splatter of blood on her cheek. She cheerfully tells Crow and Lofia that it's all right, as she took care of the escapees. Crow thanks her, admitting she was a big help, to which she confidently replies, "Leave it to me." Her expression then shifts to one of chilling intensity. She declares that she will kill garbage, trash, and other disgusting things, adding with a serene smile that she is very good at it. Crow is visibly taken aback by her statement. He forces a smile and offers a hesitant, "Yeah, I guess so," before quickly changing the subject with a simple, "Anyway, thanks." He then falls silent, his expression unreadable behind his mask. Lofia, however, notices his lack of genuine praise. She confronts him, asking what's wrong and pointing out that Almeria worked hard. When he agrees, her frustration boils over. She demands to know why he doesn't praise her, accusing him of always treating her like a joke and making fun of her. Her voice trembles with hurt and anger. Her emotional outburst is cut short when Almeria speaks up, explaining that she is also strong and wants her head stroked. Crow, taken aback, asks for clarification. This simple request makes Almeria intensely flustered. She insists that just words make her uneasy and clenches her fists, demanding head pats. Crow can only wonder at her sudden instability. Seeing this, Lofia blushes and timidly asks if she can also receive one. Crow, his patience wearing thin, reminds them both that they are in the middle of a dungeon. He sighs, asking if this is what they truly want. Resigning himself to the situation, he places a hand on each of their heads, gently patting them as they both look up with contented expressions. The moment of calm is abruptly shattered by a piercing scream echoing from deeper within the dungeon. Crow's demeanor changes instantly. He pushes one of the girls back, his focus entirely on the source of the cry. He then sprints down the stone corridor without a word, leaving his companions behind. He finds an injured woman on the floor, pleading for help. She explains that she and her companions are being attacked by goblins. Crow approaches, telling her to calm down. He reassures the woman that he is an adventurer responding to a guild request and will take her back to town. Overcome with relief, she shakes his hand and weeps, thankful that she will be safe. As Crow confirms her rescue with a smile, Almeria appears behind him. With a cold expression, she summons a divine spear and thrusts the dark weapon straight through the woman's chest, who stares in wide-eyed shock. He knelt in stunned silence, his mind reeling from the sudden, brutal act. Before him, the elf woman's lifeblood stained the ground, her hand weakly reaching for the dark spear that had pierced her as a final, whispered question escaped her lips. Towering over the scene, Almeria's face was a mask of pure fury, blood spattering her cheek. She shrieked a warning to the corpse, forbidding it from touching Crow with its dirty hands. Utterly bewildered, Crow could only voice a single, desperate question of his own. Why? A woman in a full black mask looms over the defeated elf woman, questioning why she would ever think she would receive help. She calls the notion absurd. The elf woman, terrified on the ground, stammers in confusion, asking how the masked figure dared to interrupt her enjoyable moments with Crow before being cut off by the threat of an impending strike. Just as Almeria Royce is about to bring her weapon down, Crow's voice rings out, ordering her to stop. He reminds her that as adventurers, they are not killers, and that she has been told repeatedly not to kill targets randomly. From the ground, the elf woman addresses Crow, claiming she only pretended to fall into his trap to resolve things peacefully and asks if he hunts other adventurers in the same manner. He ignores her words, instead presenting a wanted poster. He identifies her as Goblin Amersan, a member of the antisocial guild Wild Hunter. The elf woman's expression twists into one of pure shock and fury as she realizes she was deceived all along. In retaliation, she smashes a potion vial on the ground. Crow remains unfazed, asking what difference it makes now that she's been caught. The elf woman declares that this won't stop her, and with a flourish, summons a horde of goblins that claw their way out of the earth. She laughs, boasting of her hundreds of goblin troops and demanding their surrender. She threatens to kill them, steal their treasure, and use their corpses as fertilizer. As the goblin army swarms them, Almeria Royce calmly prepares for the onslaught, invoking the names of her weapons. Dual holy swords. Excalibur. She then leaps into action, a whirlwind of steel that cuts down multiple goblins in a single, fluid arc. The elf woman can only watch, stunned, as a spray of dark blood splatters past her face. With an expression of pure disgust, Lofia Flight commands the goblins to die. Seeing that it's just one more girl, the elf woman tries to rally her remaining forces, telling them not to be afraid and to run their enemies through with her spear, Gungnir. Her words are useless as Lofia effortlessly slaughters her strongest goblin forces. The elf woman stares in disbelief, questioning how her adventurers were slaughtered so easily. A horrifying realization dawns on her as she recognizes their weapons, Excalibur and Gungnir. Standing together, Almeria and Lofia display their armaments. The elf woman understands now. Those are the highest-ranked equipment for the mythology class. She demands to know how ordinary adventurers like them could possibly possess such items. The elf woman reeled back, her mind refusing to accept what she was seeing. Impossible, she stammered. In stark contrast to her shock, Crow stood with his arms crossed, calmly revealing the truth. He was the one who had created those weapons. He elaborated on his unique skill, create, an ability bestowed upon him by a goddess after a past death. This power allowed him to manifest his imagination, drawing upon knowledge from games and manga from his previous life to craft rare, artifact-level equipment. Almeria, overhearing this, cursed him, demanding to know what kind of overpowered ability that was. Crow simply advised her to surrender, stating that his creative power was far more unfair than her goblin summons. To demonstrate, he extended his hand and materialized a new weapon from thin air, calling out its name, Black Sword. The elf woman watched, stunned into silence, muttering the name back to herself as the simple, unadorned dark blade appeared in his grasp. The aura emanating from the blade was palpable. A sudden realization dawned on the elf woman, and a confident smirk spread across her face. She laughed, addressing the masked man directly. She knew his weakness. Pointing a finger accusingly, she declared that his greatest vulnerability was himself. The elf woman mocks the man, standing alone, declaring that while he can make powerful weapons, he lacks the ability to use them himself, forcing his friends to fight for him. With a sneer, she commands her goblin horde to focus all their attacks on him. As the creatures surge forward, Almeria and Lofia watch with horrified expressions. In response, he calmly admits his weapon is a bit outdated. As the elf woman looks on in shock, a dark, crackling energy erupts from his hand, shattering the surrounding stone pillars. His eyes glow with intensity as he asserts that against mere goblins, there is no way he could lose. Seeing this display of power, the panicked elf woman screams for her goblins to retreat, realizing there is no point in dealing with someone like him. Her order comes too late. She is suddenly ambushed, and blood erupts from her body as she is struck from multiple sides. She lets out a horrified scream, her arms severed in the brutal assault. Her assailants, Almeria and Lofia, loom over her with chilling expressions. They recount her sins, hunting adventurers, insulting Crow, and harming him. In the background, Crow pleads with them, insisting that killing is wrong. The terrified elf woman begs for forgiveness, asking if it's okay as long as they don't kill her. The two girls seem to ponder her question. Their deliberation ends in a storm of violence. The air fills with screams and pleas for mercy, quickly silenced by the sickening sounds of repeated, brutal impacts and splattering blood. Standing over the broken form of the elf, Lofia declares that Crow saved her and her sister from their violent father and accepted them when they were foolish. She demands the elf show regret for daring to hurt such a noble person. Almeria adds that Crow is a prince who opened her eyes to exploitation, and she will not forgive the elf for belittling him. Laughing, they both demand their victim thank him as much as possible. After their work is done, Almeria sighs with satisfaction, cheerfully recounting how she stabbed their victim. Lofia agrees with a giggle. They have, in their minds, made the girl who hurt Crow come to her senses. Her remains are now bundled in a sack. Nearby, Crow stands over the defeated Goblin leader, acknowledging that while the quest is complete, he knew this guild was problematic. He dons his mask, his thoughts turning inward. The problem, he concludes, is himself. He was the only one hurt during the quest, and he feels he is lowering the guild's average. He wonders if his failure can simply be overlooked. His introspection is cut short as Almeria and Lofia, their faces and weapons spattered with blood, call out to him with bright, cheerful smiles, ready to leave. With their grim task completed, the group departs. Crow, flanked by Almeria and Lofia, stares blankly at the mangled leg left behind before turning to drag the rest of the corpse away. A grim certainty echoes in his mind. He knew it. It would be better for him to leave this guild. His torment, however, is far from over. At the western frontier branch of the guild house, the housemaster, Zoyz, confronts the masked adventurer, Crow. Zoyz admonishes him, stating that Crow should consider the aftermath that others have to deal with. Confused, Crow touches his chin, wondering aloud if he has messed something up. Zoyz clarifies that the problem concerns the Goblin Tamer Crow recently captured. The woman is suffering from severe PTSD, making it impossible to get a full report from her as she sits muttering apologies. Crow assumes this is why he was summoned, but Zoyz corrects him, stating there is another, more important matter to discuss. He turns his head slightly, only to find his two companions standing beside him with their arms crossed and eyes closed in silent disapproval. He asks why the two of them are there as well. Zoyz dismisses his question, announcing that he has a private quest he wants to contract with Crow. With a sigh, he gestures for them to follow, stating that the others are coming in as he leads the small group toward a set of large, ornate doors. Inside a lavish room, a nobleman sips his tea, complaining that Zoyz took a long time. Zoyz introduces the man as the client, Viscount Rye. Crow is visibly startled to be dealing with nobility. The Viscount looks down on him, questioning his status. Zoyz explains that Viscount Rye is a very important person, the manager of the territory appointed by the Count, and that the guild itself operates within his domain. The Viscount offers Crow a seat, but Zoyz expresses doubt about trusting such an inexperienced person with the task. Unfazed, the Viscount reveals the quest, to find a missing person. Before he can even process the offer, his two companions step forward in unison, firmly declaring, "We decline." Crow is left utterly confused by their immediate refusal. Lulicilla remarks that a search for a missing person sounds suspicious. She elaborates, stating her dislike for closed-room negotiations and that sending Crow on a suspicious quest is out of the question, as such matters fall under the jurisdiction of the military police and knights. She questions if there's a reason the Viscount can't use official channels. Her pointed questions cause the Viscount to erupt in fury. He demands to know why they are being so impolite to him, a noble. Zoyz then turns his anger on Crow, yelling at him for his party members rejecting the quest before he, their leader, had spoken. Utterly bewildered, Crow wonders why he is the one being scolded. Flustered, he tries to explain to the Viscount that such a quest would surely lead to their deaths. Zoyz interjects, clarifying that the problem isn't the quest itself, but the location of the investigation. Hearing this, Lulicilla's demeanor shifts to one of cold seriousness as she demands that Zoyz tell her the location. Far away, under a brooding sky, the spires of a grand castle reach upward. Flags bearing a unique, heart-shaped crest snap in the wind, marking this territory as the domain of another power, the Succubus country. Lulicilla Knights presents the details of a new quest concerning the Succubus Kingdom, a free city that developed from a post town. She reports that a merchant guild patronized by a Viscount, the Devon Trading Company, has had 40 members go missing. Alicia Craze listens intently, wondering about the Viscount's business in a city self-governed by demons of lust. Nearby, Horace dismisses the job, stating that missing persons quests are not for him, and speculating that the Viscount simply wants to keep his connections to the demons from becoming public knowledge. She then shares what she has heard of the city's history. A peculiar town where, long ago, a local leader took a lust demon as his wife. Following that, the city began to widely accept lust demons, eventually becoming a self-governing territory run by them. The implication of her words sinks in, and the assembled women gasp. They realize that, in other words, the entire city is an amusement park for adults. A palpable sense of dread and disgust fills the air. Lulicilla Knight's expression hardens at the thought. She frames it as a potential war between the races, her mind conjuring an image of a massive explosion as she considers wiping the lust demon rays from the face of the world. Her extreme stance prompts others to voice their concerns. Almeria Royce timidly suggests they shouldn't get involved, calling the lust demons terrifying. Lofia Flight agrees, dismissing them as nothing more than lewd creatures. Horace also expresses his desire for the young master to stay away from the situation. Crow turns to Lillicilla, asking if she is against the mission as well. With a huff, she turns away, confirming that she is. She declares that both succubi and the humans who get involved with them are repulsive. He sighs, seeing their point of view. Despite their reservations, he finds he can't just ignore the victims. He wonders aloud if the place is truly as dangerous as they all seem to think. Flipping through the quest documents, he discovers another side to the kingdom. It is also a famous tourist destination, renowned for its unique culture, gourmet food, apparel, and more. This new information completely shifts the atmosphere. The documents also mention it's known as a city of beauty, famous for cosmetics and spas. With renewed vigor, Crow raises a fist and announces to everyone that they're going to the Succubus Kingdom, and the women cheer in enthusiastic agreement. Now ready for a trip, Alicia, sporting sunglasses and a lei, asks when they're leaving. Yuma excitedly declares that she's going too. Lillicilla looks at Crow with earnest determination and promises that she will be the one to protect him. He smiles, replying that he's counting on her. As the others celebrated their trip, Gargus stared in disbelief, wondering what was going on. He insisted they couldn't just leave the missing people, but seeing everyone else's resolve, he reluctantly decided he would go along too. His concern was immediately overshadowed by the women's fury directed at Crow. Lillicilla, Almeria, and Lofia erupted, calling him a pervert and questioning his audacity. Disgusted by their sudden shift in attitude, Crow slammed a door, muttering that something was wrong with their heads. The arguments ceased as their journey to the Succubus Kingdom began, their carriage traversing a wide, open road through the countryside. After some time, the carriage rolled to a stop, and a booted foot stepped down onto the path. They had arrived. The entrance to the Succubus Kingdom opened onto a bustling street. Crow remarked on how lively it was, then explained to Yuma that two of their companions couldn't come as the guild couldn't be left empty. At Yuma's suggestion, he agreed they should split up to investigate, preparing to draw lots to form teams. Before they separated, he reminded them to pay attention to their earrings, which would allow them to contact each other at any time. As the group made their final preparations, they were being watched. From the shadows of an alley, a young girl with small horns and a bell on her collar observed them intently. Elsewhere, from a high vantage point, a woman with a single large horn issued orders. She instructed her subordinate to treat the newcomers as guests and leave them be, but with a strict condition. If they started to investigate the Devon Trading Company, they were to be restrained. Unaware of the surveillance, the party walked through the lively streets. A woman with rabbit ears cheerfully declared that the town was a paradise for lust demons, and that she would not forgive anyone who threatened its peace. With eyes closed in bliss, Lofia Flight savors a meal, exclaiming how delicious and plump the oyster is. She turns to her companion, Crow, and wonders aloud why food always tastes so much better during a vacation. He sips his drink, gently reminding her that they are, in fact, on a job. Ignoring his comment, she urges him to eat up. With a blush, she confesses that it must be because she is eating with the one she loves. Crow seems momentarily stunned by her directness. Her intentions become clearer as she thinks about wanting Crow to build up his stamina. The table is laden with dishes known for their invigorating properties. Onegi kabayaki, oyster mixed rice, and even soft-shelled turtle miso soup. Later, the group walks through the city streets. Lofia asks Crow if he's found anything, but he reports no significant information yet, suggesting they check the back alleys. From behind a wall, a hooded Alicia Craze observes that while the town seems normal, it's teeming with touts and scouts. He agrees with her assessment, his masked face turned towards the seemingly ordinary cityscape. He remains confident, stating that they will find a lead soon and that he's sure everyone else is trying their best. As they proceed, Lofia suddenly reaches out and grabs Crow's arm, bringing the group to a halt. The reason for the stop becomes clear as the focus shifts to Alicia, who is now at a merchant stall. She holds up a pair of magic stone earrings priced at 19,000 G and, with a straight face, offers a mere 5,000 G for them. The shopkeeper stares back, his face a mask of pure disbelief and indignation at the audacious offer. The shopkeeper, taken aback by the audacious offer, insisted he had to make a living, stating his lowest price was 15,000 G. Unfazed, Alicia countered with a firm 7,000 G, leaving him momentarily speechless. Pressing her advantage, she acknowledged the artisan's skilled design, but criticized the magic stone's quality as merely the shopkeeper conceded that she had a good eye, and they settled on a price of 10,000 G, finalizing the purchase with the clink of a coin. Having secured her purchase, Alicia rejoined Lofia and casually suggested that the earrings she just bought would look good on her nipples. The bizarre comment left Lofia utterly confused. The implication finally dawned on her, and a deep blush spread across her face. Lofia realized what the earrings were for, imagining that her master might approve of such a thing. Elsewhere, in a lively establishment, Fell Souls was working as a card dealer, dressed in a bunny girl outfit. At her table, Horace remarked that a succubus dealer was a rare sight and asked what she was doing there. Fell explained it was a part-time job while she searched for someone, before asking the table for their bets. In response to the call for bets, Yuma, with a radiant and confident smile, pushed a mountain of chips to the center of the table, boldly declaring that she was all in. Her massive bet left Horace wide-eyed with shock. Yuma, however, remained perfectly composed, her cheerful expression unwavering. Gritting his teeth, Horace accepted the challenge. Of course, "I'll call," he yelled, revealing his hand to the dealer. For the kind kings. His confidence was shattered when Yuma triumphantly revealed her own hand, a royal flush. Horus slumped onto the table in defeat as Yuma celebrated her win. Fel gave a knowing wink. Meanwhile, in another location, Lulu addressed some unseen visitors. She correctly identified them as adventurers, noting they must be tired from their work, and asked what brought them to her. She and her companions, Lofia and Almeria, had found their way to a place of relaxation. Lying on treatment tables, they each stated their desires. Lofia wished to become beautiful to capture someone's attention, while Almeria simply wanted to improve her skin's complexion and circulation. Their requests were understood. As the treatment began, a warm sensation spread through their bodies. The attendants' hands moved with practiced skill, and the women sighed in pleasure. One of them mused that only a succubus could know what truly makes a woman beautiful, hoping the change would be noticed. The attendants promised more was to come. Suddenly, one of the attendants paused her work, mentioning the Devon Trading Company. Following this, a blindfold was gently placed over one of the women's eyes. The attendant explained it would help her relax and enhance the treatment's effects. She admitted that being unable to see was a little frightening. An attendant's hands, slick with oil, clasped hers, offering reassurance that they were professionals and guaranteeing she would be pleased with the result. The lead attendant, also blindfolded and holding various implements, smiled serenely. Flanked by her assistants, she declared that they were simply providing what everyone wants. Meanwhile, back in the streets near Crow, a sharp scream cut through the air. The source of the commotion was a young woman with a drawn sword, its blade pressed against the throat of the horned girl. With a furious expression, she shouted the name Lofia as a stunned Crow looked on from behind. She ignored Crow's attempt to intervene, her focus entirely on her captive. She accused the horned girl of planning to harm Crow, warning her that while he was a nice person, there were lines that should not be crossed. She vowed she would not forgive any attempt to hurt him. Crow, realizing she wasn't listening, could only watch. Hearing his plea to listen, her entire demeanor changed in an instant. With a bright, sparkling smile, she cheerfully agreed, stating that she understood. The sudden shift left Crow bewildered. She addresses Crow, holding out a piece of paper. She acknowledges having many questions for him, but first wants to discuss the note he handed her when they passed moments ago. He asks what the paper is about, but her attention is already fixed on the horned girl kneeling before them. With her hand resting on her sword's hilt, she accuses the girl of being a succubus targeting Crow. The girl flinches, vehemently denying the claim. As the accusation hangs in the air, the horned girl suddenly doubles over, coughing violently. Crow rushes to her side, asking what's wrong. Through her gasps, the girl questions if Lofia did something to her, but Lofia calmly denies any involvement. He leans in close, gently lifting the girl's chin. With an unnerving calm, he observes that her life essence looks very delicious. In a flash, Lofia's sword slices through the air, forcing Crow and the horned girl apart. She sternly reminds him that he made a promise to her. Her gaze then shifts to the horned girl, her expression turning cold and menacing. She issues a chilling warning. If the girl lays a hand on Crow, she will not be forgiven. The threat escalates as Lofia's killing intent becomes palpable, her face contorted in a furious expression as she vows she won't forgive her. The horned girl recognizes the same murderous aura from before, while screams erupt from the surrounding area. The source of the screams becomes clear. They're completely surrounded by about 20 armed women positioned on the surrounding structures. The horned girl, despite her fear, urges Lofia not to kill them, pointing out that the situation is unclear and that Lofia's expression is terrifying. Ignoring the plea for restraint, she leaps into action. With brutal efficiency, she smashes the hilt of her sword into an assailant's face, sending them flying backward as a small, satisfied sound escapes her lips. She stands amidst the chaos, a serene smile gracing her lips as she holds her weapon. She declares that as long as it is Crow's instruction, she will unleash her Heaven 10-Fist sword. She moved through the attackers with contemptuous ease, her blade a silver arc that sent bodies flying. With a calm smile, she noted that she was only using the back of her sword, assuring her companion that there was no need for concern. Watching the one-sided battle unfold, Crow remained silent, a thoughtful expression on his masked face. His quiet intensity unsettled the horned girl beside him. Trembling, she looked up at him and asked if he had betrayed them. Meanwhile, in the midst of the fray, one of the masked assailants called out to Lofia, questioning her connection to someone named Crow. Before any answer could be given, Crow suddenly swept the horned girl into his arms, telling her they needed to leave and regroup. From below, Lofia watched in wide-eyed shock, wondering why he was carrying her in such a way. Her confusion hardened into resolve as she commanded her creations to attack everyone at once and prevent their escape. In response, the horned girl thrust out her hand, unleashing a torrent of black flames that erupted into a massive wall, blocking the path of the pursuing women. Halted by the unnatural blaze, the masked assailants could only watch their targets vanish. One of them clicked her tongue in frustration, muttering that they had gotten away. Now clear of the ambush, the trio leaped across the city's rooftops. Lofia immediately confronted Crow, demanding to know why he brought the girl with them. She then issued a stern command. From that moment on, He was forbidden from contacting anyone else. He explained that he had to bring her along because he knew the guild opinions would be divided on how to treat her, alluding to the collar around the child's neck. The Horned girl clarified that her suffering wasn't just from hunger. A curse had activated when she made contact with him to deliver a letter. Crow identified the device as a collar of sin, a cursed item that kills anyone who disobeys their master's will. As a glowing sigil appeared on the girl's chest, Lofia turned to Crow and asked what the letter said. He holds the letter, its message simple and desperate. Please save the child. Promising to tell the truth, he stands in a forest on the outskirts of the Succubus Kingdom, where the Horned girl is noisily drinking a liquid from his arm. She finishes drinking from the vial of his blood, her thirst sated. He asks if his blood was all right, and she thanks him, explaining that she has calmed down now. He then turns to Lofia, whose expression is filled with hostility, and tells her to stand down. The girl formally introduces herself as Hayoui of the Succubus tribe. With a somber look, she gestures to the device around her neck, confirming that it is, as they suspected, a collar of sin. He asks her to explain the current situation, assuring her that they only need to know the essentials. Hayoui agrees, but warns that she has a story to tell. Hayoui begins her tale, recounting how the Succubus Kingdom has been suffering from chronic starvation for years. While the central district prospers, the outer territories are impoverished, with ever-increasing taxes fueling widespread discontent among her people. He listens intently as she sits on a rock some distance away, prompting her to continue her story by asking, and then, with tears welling in her eyes and streaming down her face, Hayoui reveals the desperate outcome of their suffering. The succubus started attacking humans. The revelation connects the pieces for them. Lofia realizes this must be how the Devon Trading Company was attacked, and Crow deduces that the ambushers they faced earlier were sent to silence Hayoui. She can only nod in sorrowful agreement. Lofia remarks on how troublesome it is that they seem to be covering up an organized crime. Hayoui clenches her fist, convinced that such a cover-up cannot last, and that if the truth is exposed, it will mean disaster for all demons. Hayoui finishes her thought with a despairing whisper, believing everyone will be executed. In response, Crow kneels before her, takes her hands in his, and makes a solemn vow. I'll save you. Lofia reacts with shock to Crow's declaration, admitting that while she supports his goal of a peaceful resolution, she doesn't know how much she can truly help. Beside her, Hayoui looks on with a hint of confusion. His companion's doubt is met with his quiet resolve, a single word hanging in the air as he steels himself for what is to come. But his intentions are already being undermined elsewhere. In another part of the city, a succubus rages, furious that Hayoui has dared to side with the adventurers and betray her own kind. The furious succubus reports to her leader, a tall, horned woman who calmly dismisses the concern. She reassures her subordinate that this city is their garden and that with reinforcements, they will find the intruders easily. She scoffs at Hayoi's actions, calling it a betrayal of the queen's kindness. Her calm is broken by a sudden, piercing scream. Her confidence is immediately shattered by discovery. On a nearby scaffold, Alicia Craze and her companions lie defeated and scattered. As the defeated adventurers lie helpless, three new figures arrive, all blindfolded. Fel, Almeria, and their leader. They survey the scene, noting that these must be the last traces of their master. They identify the down group as the reason they couldn't contact Lord Crow, deeming their actions unforgivable. Before they can act, little Yuma steps forward, her face twisted in fury. She confronts the horned succubus, accusing her and her comrades of kidnapping her big bro and demanding they give him back. The succubus leader is taken aback by the child's accusation, confusedly asking what she's talking about. A powerful crackle of energy, a sound like thunder, fills the air. Her confusion is answered not with words, but with overwhelming power. A massive blast of lightning erupts from Yuma, shattering the ground and sending the succubi flying. In the aftermath, the ground is fractured and the succubi lie defeated. Yuma sits amidst the destruction, crying for her big bro not to leave her. Hayoui stares in disbelief, wondering what she just witnessed. Lofia, however, understands. Seeing Yuma cry hardens her resolve. She declares that for making a child cry, the succubi deserve 1,000 deaths, and that even though they wish to avoid violence, their hand has been forced. Crow stands resolute, his eyes glowing brightly behind his mask. He makes a bold promise to Fel. He will save not only her, but her entire tribe. His declaration is met not with relief, but with sheer terror. Fel's eyes widen in horror as she grips her own hand, her mind reeling. To her, this is not salvation. It is a declaration of war. The very fate of the succubus tribe now hangs in the balance. A piercing scream echoes through the air. The maid, Fel, sits with her eyes closed, the sound of agony washing over her. The scream originates from a scene of utter devastation. In what appears to be a town square, figures are consumed by a writhing, dark substance. Alicia Craze stands amidst the chaos, her expression grim, while Fel sits on the ground nearby, surrounded by the destruction. She glances over at Hayoui, who seems equally disturbed by the screams. Nearby, Yuma groans in her sleep, troubled by the noise. The source of the carnage becomes clear. A lone figure unleashes a torrent of dark, corrosive energy, engulfing victims who can only shriek in pain as they are dissolved. Alicia holds up a complex wand, explaining its nature. She reveals it is an amazing Lia's wand, forged by their master. It is a fusion of healing and combustion magics, the devastating effects of which are now plain to see. One of the victims, their body horribly melted, begs for death. An unseen interrogator coolly asks why they should grant such a mercy when the victim has yet to disclose Kurosama's whereabouts. The scene shifts to an interrogation. Lillicilanites questions Fel, who is now a captive. Fel insists she has no idea where Kurosama is, claiming they ran away. Lillicilla seems unconvinced. Her patience wearing thin, Lillicilla presses a knife to Fel's cheek, her visible eye wide with fury. She menacingly asks if Fel is suggesting that Kurosama is actively avoiding them. Terrified, Fel can only stammer that she doesn't know. Elsewhere, Alicia gently wakes Yuma. She pulls Yuma into a comforting embrace, telling Fel that this line of questioning is futile. Alicia explains that all the captives are giving the same story, so it is likely the truth. Hearing this, Yuma expresses her relief, glad that her Nianai is alright. Seeing the interrogation stall, Lillicilanites concludes that a different approach is necessary. With a snap of her fingers, she puts a new plan into motion. Her attention shifts to the horn girl, Hayoui. She begins to question her about the Devon Trading Company, causing a look of pure terror to spread across Hayui's face. Without waiting for an answer, she lunges forward and violently grabs the girl's hand, crushing it in her grip. Hayoui cries out that she doesn't know anything and wouldn't tell even if she did. Lillicilla calmly acknowledges that she seems to have some knowledge and offers to hear her out this one time. Meanwhile, Yuma turns to Alicia, observing that the captive's tense muscles and irregular heartbeat betray her claims of ignorance. Alicia agrees, looking over a list of potential locations where large numbers of people could be held captive. She notes several spots in the city: the Succubus Temple ruins, an abandoned hospital on the outskirts, a warehouse district, and a Succubus hotel with a multipurpose hall. As Lillicilla continues to apply pressure to Hayui's hand, Fel quietly adds one more location to the list: an underground BDSM facility. The intense, crushing pain becomes too much for Hayoui to bear. She finally breaks, screaming in agony that her hand hurts. Seeing this, Fel activates a communication device, calling out to Lillicilla. Lillicilla receives the message loud and clear, confirming that Fel has something to report regarding the Devon Trading Company's location. She holds her pistol at the ready, her expression firm. As another confirms their target is underground, Lillicilla declares that they are on their way now. Around them, in what appears to be a bathhouse, Alicia and Yuma stand prepared for the coming raid, while the defeated Hayoui lies on the floor amidst discarded clothing. In a clearing, a voice cries out in exasperation, questioning why Crow must always be so difficult. The speaker, Lofia, confronts him directly, her fist raised in protest. She insists there is no way they can save the succubi, reminding him that they were just attacked by them. Crow appears startled by her vehemence. Beside them, Hayoui cheerfully remarks that she learns her morality from erotic literature. The statement shocks Lofia, who retorts that such a source is discriminatory and that they cannot even be sure if the girl is telling the truth. Crow considers this for a moment, then turns to Lofia. He expresses his confidence that they can succeed in their mission, but only if she is by his side. His words cause Lofia to blush intensely, her eyes turning to hearts as she completely misinterprets his meaning. She stammers that it's quite bold of him to suggest it would be just the two of them, reminding him that Hayoui is also there. Ignoring her flustered state, Crow turns his full attention to Hayoui. He tasks her with a critical part of the plan. She must convince her queen to help them free the people held captive by a certain trading company. She hesitates, voicing her concern about going against her queen. Crow, however, confidently brushes her worries aside, telling her not to fret. He then makes a promise, assuring Hayoui that he can deal with the hazardous collar she is forced to wear. Meanwhile, somewhere deep in the underground tunnels of the Succubus country, a heavy stone wall stands, sealing a passage. The silence is shattered by a massive explosion. The sturdy ground finally gives way after 3 powerful shots from a weapon known as a Tazerum, blasting a new entrance into the subterranean depths. Elsewhere, Lofia wonders aloud where Crow-kun has disappeared to. Hayoui reassures her, suggesting he is likely safe with Big Sis and is probably getting closer to the truth. Meanwhile, having breached the underground, Lillicillanites, Alicia Craze, and their team navigate the rubble-strewn passage. Lillicilla urges them to quicken their pace. As they venture deeper into a large, circular tunnel, she recoils, covering her nose against a terrible, overpowering smell. Her companions catch up. Alicia turns to Almeria, asking for confirmation that succubi drain erotic energy. When Almeria affirms this, Alicia concludes that this must be the source of the disgusting odor. The source becomes horrifyingly clear as they find a cell packed with emaciated, zombie-like men, their bodies withered and their eyes hollow. Lillicilla gasps, overwhelmed not by the sight of the men, but by an even stronger scent emanating from deeper within, the smell of women. This leads them to another cell, where captive women claw at the bars, screaming for help, crying out that their bodies feel like they are on fire. Their desperate pleas are interrupted by a mocking voice from the shadows. A horn figure comments on how disgusting men are when they lose control of themselves. Stepping into the light, A succubus with dark pigtails and a mask addresses her companion, thanking the Trading Company Investigation Unit for their hard work. She reveals that the prisoners are members of that very company, now their prey. She explains their method, amplifying the captives' desires to feast on the resulting energy until they become like zombies. As the hidden investigators watch in shock, she holds a blade to a captive's throat, telling him not to move a muscle. She leans in close to the terrified man, whose eyes are wide with fear. With a lick of her lips, she warns the hidden onlookers that one wrong step, and the captive gets it. The man can only plead for help. She warns the intruders that the other captives are also wearing cursed bracelets, suggesting they surrender peacefully. The man she holds hostage turns to Lilicilla's group, desperately begging them to rescue him and not let him die. In response, Lilicilla raises a modern firearm, the safety clicking off with a sharp sound. Unmoved by the plea, she calmly questions if she should just kill them. Without hesitation, a gunshot erupts. The captive's head is obliterated, splattering blood across the stunned succubus. Lilicilla stands with cold resolve, her weapon still aimed forward. With a gun pressed near her head, the horned succubus stares in wide-eyed terror. Her captor's voice is cold, questioning why she would use hostages of her own kind, a tactic that only muddies the waters. Behind her, a command rings out as Lophia's swordswoman calls to her companions, Alma, Rophia. The sharp sound of blades being unsheathed follows immediately. The command unleashes a swift and brutal slaughter. The succubus's allies are cut down with merciless efficiency, and she can only watch from the ground, paralyzed with fear as the scene is painted in blood. Amidst the carnage, Lilicilla Knights stands silhouetted and splattered in gore. She looks down at the trembling succubus, who stammers out a question. Are they truly human? She leans in, confirming that they are. Lilicilla explains that this brutality is precisely what they would do for the ones they love. The succubus flinches, unable to comprehend such a twisted display of affection. Her thoughts turn to an image of Crow. She reflects on his character, someone who will always help anyone in need, no matter their situation. A grim smile forms on her bloodstained face. She elaborates that Crow shouldn't have to bear such a heavy burden, so she is sparing him that suffering in advance. Her justification is simple. It is because she loves him. The chaos continues. As one of their targets flees, Lophia orders Alma to give chase. Nearby, Lulu-san watches events unfold. Elsewhere, the short blonde woman in black restrains a male captive, announcing they still have one alive as the pigtail succubus lets out a desperate scream. The captive man, now stripped and pinned down, demands to know what they are doing. He yells, questioning why they would side with succubi who exploit humans. His question is met with chilling calm. Lilicilla, adjusting the rose on her collar, clarifies that they are not on the succubi's side. The short blonde woman adds the final, shocking truth. Of all creatures, humans are the most detestable. She presses the barrel of her pistol hard against the captive's cheek, her voice cold and steady. She informs him that she will be the one asking the questions now. Her gaze narrows as she begins her interrogation, demanding to know about his connection to the Trading Company. She shoves the weapon into his mouth, pinning him to the ground. With chilling calm, she asks him to explain exactly what he and his associates were doing in this town. Elsewhere, in a lavishly decorated hall, a masked messenger runs at a desperate pace, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she calls out for Her Majesty. She bursts into a vast throne room, falling before a regal figure seated far at the end of the hall. The messenger cries out in apology, confessing her failure and describing their assailants as completely insane. Sweat beads on her brow as her voice rises with panic. She tells someone named Nithya that they must devise a counterplan right away, one that involves mobilizing all of the succubi. The woman on the throne, her expression severe, interrupts the panicked report. She asks coolly if the messenger came directly to her after encountering the target. The messenger flinches, stammering an affirmative. Her Majesty clicks her tongue in clear disapproval. She notes that while the messenger managed to escape, she did so by using the underground maze to lose their pursuers. As the implication hangs in the air, the grand doors to the throne room begin to splinter under a powerful force. Her Majesty states the grim truth. The messenger fell right into their trap. The messenger turns, her eyes wide with dawning horror. The doors burst open, and a hand snakes through the gap. Alicia Craze peers into the room, her eyes wide and unnervingly dark, and declares, "Found you." The messenger recoils, screaming in terror at the realization that she has led the enemy right to their doorstep. A sharp scream cuts through the air of a grand corridor, followed by a low rumbling. Alerted, Crow, Lilicilla, and Hayoui race towards the source of the disturbance. They come to a halt, catching their breath. Lilicilla, relieved, declares that they must be on the right track. Hayoui, however, is visibly shaken, asking what the scream and rumbling could mean, while Crow remains tense and focused on the path ahead. Lilicilla listens intently, remarking that it sounds like a massacre. Crow's expression hardens. He agrees they seem to be too late. He points to a large set of doors, stating that the source is just beyond them and there is no time to waste. Hayoui calls out his name, her voice filled with concern. The group bursts through the doors into a large chamber. They freeze at the sight before them. A warrior with a high ponytail holds a gagged and bound man aloft by his throat, his feet dangling uselessly. From the side, Almeria Royce appears, her face lighting up with relief as she calls out to Crow. Her joy instantly evaporates, replaced by a look of sheer horror as she takes in a violent scene. She rushes to his side, anxiously asking if he's all right and if the succubi managed to harm him. Relieved, she notes that he seems fine, though she admits she's feeling a bit drained herself. She warns him to be careful, explaining that the succubi were incredibly harsh. Crow looks past her, reporting that the people he questioned were all tight-lipped. None of them knew her location. With that line of inquiry exhausted, he concludes there's nothing more to discuss with them. A regal voice cuts in, declaring that she knows exactly why they've come. The Succubus Majesty stands before them, accusing them of being spies for the Viscount and lapdogs of the nobility. Crow attempts to reason with her, asking if she is the queen and insisting there's a misunderstanding. He explains their true purpose, to free people from the Devon Trading Company and to make peace. Beside him, Almeria senses this is not going well. The Succubus Majesty scoffs at his words. Misunderstanding? Peace? She repeats with contempt. She declares that what is happening is, in fact, a massive misunderstanding on his part. Her voice grows cold as she explains the fundamental nature of her kind. For succubi, nothing satisfies their hunger like human essence. When that hunger strikes, they hunt humans, and in the process, their prey experiences ecstasy. She turns her attention to the captive man, her voice laced with a predatory sweetness. She extols the experience of being subdued by a succubus as the ultimate thrill, a pleasure unlike anything else the world has to offer. With a sinister smile, she invites him to try it for himself. Before the man can answer, a warrior with a red ponytail bursts into the chamber, her spear striking the throne with explosive force. The impact shatters the ornate chair, but the Succubus Majesty remains untouched, her gaze cold and steady amidst the chaos. The warrior, her face a mask of fury, demands to know what the succubus was planning for Crow. She questions if this is some trick or a death wish, concluding that for a nasty little pest, like her, the only fitting punishment is death. As one of the succubi cries out in concern for Her Majesty, Crow steps forward. He calmly addresses his allies, questioning why they don't just surrender. He reasons that any successful action on their part will only serve to deepen suspicion against them. Hayoui pleads with Her Majesty to stop, insisting that they must confess everything and release the hostages. She believes that by showing sincerity, they might still receive freedom from the humans. The Succubus Majesty glares back, enraged, questioning how Hayoui dares to reveal their secrets. Hayoui calmly responds that trying to conceal the truth would have been pointless anyway. Her Majesty's fury erupts. She grabs Hayoui's collar, snarling about being betrayed by a fool. She argues that sincerity and confession mean nothing, because as long as the famine in the city isn't resolved, the same tragic events will keep happening. Hayoui can only stare back, stunned into silence. She continues her tirade, questioning if Hayoui truly wants them to grovel before humans and become slaves begging for mercy. She calls them vile creatures who only think of exploitation, forcing humiliation upon their comrades. With a cold look, she tells the horrified Hayoui that this is precisely why humans always deceive her. The emotional turmoil triggers a violent reaction. The curse collar around Hayoui's neck activates, and she chokes as a dark, viscous substance erupts from her mouth. As she gasps in agony, another succubus declares that the collar's curse has exceeded its limit and there is nothing she can do. Hayoui's life, she states, will soon come to an end. Desperate, Hayoui cries out that Crow can break the curse. She turns to the masked man, pleadingly asking why he can't break it when he promised to help her. Crow looks at her, his expression unreadable, and admits that he did say that, but his tone is evasive. From nearby, the captive Nithya scoffs. She calls Hayoui an idiot, asking if she hasn't realized the truth yet. She then delivers the devastating blow. Crow planned to kill Hayoui from the very start. Nithya explains that this was the deal he made with Her Majesty. Hayoui's death is the solution. Crow confirms it with a simple, cold affirmation. He explains that with this method, the city can be saved, the client will be satisfied, suspicions will be cleared, and they can return to the guild. Hayoui stares, her world crumbling at the betrayal. The other succubi react with shock and disbelief at the revelation. Nithya cries out that she doesn't want to die. The Succubus Majesty remains impassive, her decision made. All Hayoui can do is weep, her eyes wide with the horror of her fate. Her despair twists into a final, horrifying display. With tears streaming down her face and blood trickling from her mouth, Hayoui lets out a wild, broken laugh, her hands clutching at the cursed collar that is ending her life. Her laughter is cut short by a sickening detonation. The collar explodes, obliterating her head in a spray of gore. Crow stands nearby, a silent, impassive observer of the gruesome execution he set in motion. Her headless body crumples to the marble floor. As she falls, a final, whispered question escapes her eye. Karasan, her severed head comes to rest in a rapidly spreading pool of blood. Standing over the carnage, Crow calmly addresses an unseen audience, asking, "So, what will you do?" The succubus leader, marked with a crescent moon on her forehead, scoffs at the idea of a deal. She questions why she would ever agree, especially after seeing how they treated one of their own kin, even a traitor. Below her, in a vast hall filled with succubi, the still form of Hayoui lies on the cold floor. In response, The ponytail warrior demands they step away from Hayoui, accusing them of trying to exploit their weakness to seize control of the city. The one-horned woman spits the words, "filthy human." Unfazed, Crow confronts the leader, stating this has nothing to do with his quest. She retorts that they have no choice but to attack humans. Holding up a small, glowing object, Crow calls her insane and challenges her resolve. He kneels beside Hayoui and gently places a ring on her finger. As he holds her hand, a brilliant light erupts from her body, signaling the beginning of a resurrection. As the light subsides, her eyes flutter open. Hayoui sits up, bewildered, murmuring that she was supposed to be dead. The surrounding succubi, including their stunned leader, stare in disbelief. Crow explains that he is sorry, but the only way to handle the collar's curse was to first let it fully activate. He smiles warmly, reminding her that he kept his promise to save her. Overwhelmed with relief and gratitude, Hayoui bursts into tears and throws her arms around him in a desperate hug. The succubus leader's eyes widen in shock. She recognizes the ring as a resurrection artifact, a cheat item on the level of a divine relic, and finds the situation impossible to comprehend. At that moment, a woman wielding a star-shaped sword appears, identifying her group as Nightmare and demanding to know who they are. Following her is another woman with a large mechanical arm, who winks playfully. She boasts that with Kuro-chan, the strongest in the world, and his subordinates, they are a formidable team. As Crow continues to comfort Hayoui, the succubus leader, now completely flustered, stammers that there must be a misunderstanding and that she has no intention of killing or controlling them. She falls to her knees before Crow, promising to help save both Hayoui and the city. She confesses that their aggression is an act of desperation, driven by a famine that plagues their country. Crow's expression hardens. He listens, then poses a critical question. What if the root of their problem lies elsewhere? His question hangs in the air until a woman named Lulu Rafia arrives, accompanied by the short blonde woman in black. Addressing Horus, Lulu asks for permission to deliver her report and requests that everyone be able to hear it. She then announces to the entire hall that an investigation into the Devon Trading Company has confirmed widespread fraud, embezzlement, and illegal reselling of goods throughout the Succubus Kingdom. The revelation causes an immediate uproar. One man grabs a bald dignitary by the collar, accusing him of orchestrating the entire scheme. As Horus watches with a calm, calculating gaze, the bald man panics, vehemently denying any involvement. He insists the company acted alone and desperately asks what will become of his contract. As the interrogation continued, the spiky-haired man, Garga, loomed over the battered suspect, demanding the truth. The bald man finally broke, admitting he had ordered everything himself. Garga scoffed, telling him he should have confessed from the start. Nearby, Lulu presented the grim findings of their investigation. She explained that more and more traces of the company's shady dealings were appearing, including bribery and tax evasion. The company had used the Viscount's authority as a shield, luring those who couldn't pay into illegal loans and ultimately selling them into slavery. They also extorted obscene protection fees from the succubi, and now they had obtained testimonies to prove it all. The shocking truth came to light as Lillicilla Knights delivered the final, damning conclusion. The Devon Trading Company was nothing more than a criminal guild. The revelation sent a wave of shock through the onlookers. Crow's eyes widened behind his mask, while Hayoui and the succubus majesty stared in stunned silence. The full weight of the conspiracy finally laid bare. 1 hour ago, in a dark, arched hallway, a man lies defeated on the floor. He looks up in shock as two armed women stand over him, their figures silhouetted against the distant light. The woman with her hair in buns, Lillicilla Knights, presses a strange, gun-like device to the man's head. Her expression is cold as she demands a report from her associates. The man, Crow, sweats profusely under her intense gaze. The report begins with Alicia Craze. She explains that the root cause of recent economic turmoil seems to be distribution difficulties, which were blamed on bandit attacks. This, in turn, caused the price of a specific order to soar. She clarifies her point, noting that the price only soared until recently. In fact, she continues, merchants simply hadn't had time to change the price tags back, gesturing to jewelry with wildly different prices marked on them. Alicia concludes her report with a critical observation. The distribution routes were restored at the exact same time the Devon Trading Company disappeared. She asserts that only the trading company could have known the routes in such detail. The maid, Fell Souls, picks up the thread. She reports that illegal gambling and illicit trade have also become a significant problem, and the organization leading these operations was, once again, the Devon Trading Company. The report shifts to the casino. A woman in a bunny outfit explains that the company seized the management rights and began exploiting the succubi staff with low pay. The elf woman beside her adds that customers also reported the presence of intimidating men in the establishment until recently. Lillicilla Knights processes this information, her expression hardening. It seems the trading company's goal was to crush competing entertainment businesses. To do so, they increased the number of adult entertainment shops and even offered vulgar secret options at the casino. The short-haired knight delivers the final report. The company used fraud, intimidation, and obstruction to monopolize the market, ultimately forcing the succubi into prostitution. She reveals the Viscount joined forces with them, and when the company vanished, He hired their services to find them. Hearing this, the captive, Crow, panics, shouting that he knows nothing and is just a temporary member. He desperately pleads with his captors, his face contorted in fear. He warns them to think carefully, revealing that a powerful noble lord was backing their entire operation. The captive, cornered and desperate, pleads his case to Lillicilla Knights. He insists he is not the villain, merely a part-timer caught up in the scheme. His desperation turns to rage as he blames both the Viscount and the succubi, realizing he was tricked. Crow clutches his head, listening to the man's furious rant about how the Viscount promised to overlook their actions, and his disgust that they weren't even allowed to touch the succubi for free. Lillicilla listens silently as the man continues his tirade, spitting that the very idea of succubi having their own town and pretending to be human is disgusting. He screams his justification, claiming the town was built with filthy succubus money to begin with, and that they were simply putting it to good use for human society. His words hang in the air as Lillicilla stares, her face splattered with blood, her eyes wide. A sharp crack echoes through the chamber. The man's hand falls limp. Lillicilla stands over his silenced form, declaring that they're not on his side and have no reason to fight for his cause. With the matter concluded, Crow turns to the Succubus Majesty and asks if the problem is now solved. Lillicilla confirms that neither the trading company nor the Viscount will threaten the town again. Crow simply states that he already knew the company was a criminal organization. Hearing this, one of the succubus attendants explains their difficult position. She reveals they endured the exploitation to the breaking point because they feared that if rumors spread of succubi threatening humans, their entire country would be crushed immediately. The Succubus Majesty looks up, her face a mask of regret. She calls herself a fool, lamenting that if the truth of this incident gets out, the same cycle of fear and exploitation will simply begin all over again. Facing Crow and his companions, she makes a solemn offer. "Kill me," she requests, believing that if she takes responsibility for what has happened, her country might have a chance to endure. Her subjects cry out in protest, pleading for her life and explaining she acted to protect them. Lillicilla listens, her expression grim. She concedes that there is truth in the Queen's words. The town's existence depends on human traffic, and she realizes that even if they avoid punishment, they will perish if they lose humanity's trust. Faced with the Queen's solemn request, Crow draws his sword, the steel ringing as it leaves its sheath. He acknowledges that the Queen must take responsibility, seeing this grim act as the only way forward. But as he prepares to act, the young succubus, Hayoui, rushes forward, placing herself between his blade and her queen. She spreads her arms wide, a desperate shield against the executioner. Her sudden intervention brings the grim proceedings to a halt. The masked messenger, Nithya, cries out for him to stop, begging him not to kill their queen. He listens as Hayoui confesses, her voice filled with anguish. She declares that the queen is not at fault, that she is the one to blame. If someone must die, she insists it should be her. Crow's expression remains neutral. He had expected this. Her tearful confession confirms his suspicion. He looks down at the distraught girl, acknowledging her as the true culprit. He then directs her attention to the collar around her neck, asking if she understood its significance. He explains that the collar, by its very name Sin, is something worn by criminals. Her sobs rack her small frame as she explains her past. She recounts working at a trading company shop due to a debt. Even as a succubus, she struggled with men and the act of draining essence. Consumed by hunger and hatred, her desperation grew. The memory surfaces stark and horrifying. She recalls the moment she lost control, finding herself over the lifeless body of her employer, having drained all of his essence and killed him. Overwhelmed by guilt, she cries out that if only she hadn't given in to her impulse, none of this would have happened. Yet, despite her actions, the queen and the entire town chose to protect her. Her self-condemnation is cut short by Nithya's sharp retort. The masked messenger declares that Hayoui is wrong, arguing that she was merely the trigger for an inevitable event. Sooner or later, she insists, someone else would have been pushed to do the same. She declared that since everyone's essence had been drained to this point, all of them were accomplices. He looked down at the kneeling Hayoui, murmuring her name before quietly disagreeing with the assessment, stating that it probably wasn't true. His attention then shifted fully to Hayoui. He brought up the ring he had mentioned before, explaining that once he used it, its magic would be depleted until it could recharge. Hayoui, bewildered, insisted she didn't care about being saved, but he cut her off, telling her that he was counting on her. In a sudden, shocking movement, he thrust his own sword straight through his left forearm. Blood erupted from the wound, splattering across the ground as the Succubus Majesty and the other onlookers stared in horrified disbelief. His arm bleeding profusely, he apologized to the stunned crowd, telling them it was all right and asking them to simply watch. He then addressed the Succubus Majesty directly, whose eyes were wide with a mixture of shock and desperation. He told her it was okay for her to drink, then asked a pointed question. She hadn't eaten any food at all, had she? He continued, showing his understanding of her plight. As the queen, she had been holding back, unable to simply attack humans without a noble cause like protecting her comrades. He extended his bleeding arm towards her and Hayoui. He explained that he understood completely. When you're hungry, you get irritable, and your thoughts turn negative. His mind flashed back to his previous world, to a memory of his school desk covered in cruel graffiti, words like die and ugly. He remembered how his lunchbox and wallet were stolen all the time, leaving him hungry. Returning to the present, his mask now covering his face, he spoke with a slightly unsteady voice. He advised them to get their fill first, and only then to think about other matters. He collapses to the ground from the sudden blood loss. Around him, his companions cry out his name in a panic. He can only think how pathetic he is to fall from something like this, as they frantically discuss using healing magic to stop the bleeding. His consciousness drifts back to a memory from that time. He was on a train, surrounded by jeering classmates who laughed and filmed his humiliation on their phones. His eyes narrowed, filled with a silent, simmering anguish from the relentless torment. Later, walking alone through the desolate streets, he wondered why it had to be him. Believing no one cared, he felt tired of it all and stepped into the blinding headlights of an approaching truck. In the void that followed, a divine being appeared before the soul of Yashinai Kuro. She introduced herself as Noah, the goddess who governs life and souls. For meeting such a tragic end, she declared she would grant him a second life, a chance to live without regrets, and bestowed upon him a single cheat skill for his hardship. The goddess then offered him a cool mask. She smiled warmly, assuring him that if he wore it, something good was sure to happen. His mind returns to the present. Lying on the cold ground, he stares blankly upwards, questioning the goddess's promise. What part of this situation could possibly be a good thing? He sees the faces of the women gathered around him, all of them weeping. He wonders what kind of expression he must be making to cause them all such sorrow. Their tears fall freely. Yuma, the bunny ear woman, and Alicia are all overcome with grief. Lillicilla Knights sobs uncontrollably, her voice choked with emotion as she clutches the rose on her collar and begs him, please don't die. As he lay unconscious, a relieved voice nearby confirmed that the potion was working. His pulse and breathing had returned to normal, and it was clear he would wake up soon. When he finally awoke, he was met by the tear-streaked, smiling face of Hayoui, who thanked him with overwhelming relief and gratitude. Their journey back began, a horse-drawn carriage traveling under a starry sky and continuing on into the light of the next day. They finally arrived at their destination, a large, stately building that served as the local guild headquarters. Inside a spacious office, Crow stood before the guild master to deliver his report. He explained the situation with conviction, stating that the people from the trading company were all dead, having run into trouble with thieves. He insisted this was certain, as they had obtained testimonies from the succubi at the scene. The guild master, Zoyz, listened with a weary expression. He acknowledged Crow's good work, but seemed deeply troubled, asking if he truly believed the succubi before quickly telling him to pretend he hadn't heard that part. He continued, stating that he understood the situation perfectly well. The real issue, he clarified, was that Crow and his companions had a tendency to overdo things. After Crow left, Zoyz reflected on the matter. He had thought the incident would turn out badly for the Viscount, likely forcing him to abandon his shady side business. The actual outcome, however, was completely unexpected. That unexpected result was now a brightly lit shop in the city. Walking alongside Crow, a delighted Alicia Craze pointed it out, wondering aloud why a succubus would have opened a business all the way out here. Inside the guild hall, Crow questions Guild Master Zoyz, wondering if he did something wrong. He reasons that since the Viscount's assets, including the real estate, originally belonged to the succubi, their claim was just. Zoyz cuts him off, his tone severe. He warns that while they may have managed the situation this time, it remains a fact that a succubus attacked humans. If any further problems arise, that is how it will be recorded. Head bowed, Crow quietly accepts, stating he will take responsibility. The guild master's stern facade crumbles into desperation. Sweat drips down his face as he grabs Crow, pleading with him not to throw away his career by quitting the guild to take the fall. A compromise is reached. Zoyz agrees to look into measures with the Federation that could allow succubi and humans to coexist peacefully. In the meantime, he tells Crow to continue acting as their stopper, a role Crow seems to feel a bit awkward about, though he agrees. His meeting concluded, he turns and walks down the grand staircase, leaving the guild master behind. At the base of the stairs, Lillicilla Knights waits for him. He calls out to her as she thoughtfully adjusts the rose pinned to her collar. She turns to him on the busy street, her expression full of concern. She asks if he is truly okay with the arrangement he just made. He confirms that he is. As they walk together, she voices her doubts, questioning how long a cover-up, a false report filed to protect the succubi, can possibly last. His gaze drifts to the street, where a cheerful succubus is handing out flyers. He explains his hope. Even if the truth is eventually discovered, by then, they will have had time to build trust with the community. As if to prove his point, the same succubus is seen kindly helping an elderly woman with her heavy bags. Crow watches, thinking to himself that what happens next is entirely up to them. Crow confirms that Lilicilla's proposal to open a shop was the right move. She agrees, stating that as long as the succubi show remorse for attacking him, there is no reason to remain hostile. He remarks that for the time being, this is the best they can do. Lilicilla closes her eyes and concurs, glad that the succubi agreed to the plan. His expression shifts as he brings up the members of the trading company, all of whom perished. Lilicilla looks at him, remarking that it's a shame they succumbed to their weakness before help could arrive. She reiterates that it is a genuine shame, adding that it's always better to minimize the loss of life. Turning to him, she comments on his kindness. As they continue on their way, she warns him that this very kindness could one day be his undoing. She explains that had the succubi taken him hostage after he collapsed, there would have been nothing they could have done to save him. He explains his actions, stating that he trusted the succubus and felt he had to go that far to eliminate her distrust, though he admits he never actually intended to collapse. She walks behind him, quietly admitting that in that moment, she genuinely believed his life was over. Her gaze is distant as she reflects on a fundamental truth. In this world, there is magic. This magic manifests as supernatural powers capable of healing any wound in an instant, sometimes even powerful enough to reverse death itself. But even with such miracles, she knows that he, Kuro, came far too close to death. She worries that he will disregard his own life for someone else's sake. He clenches his fist, the memory of his own blood splattering across the ground still fresh. Lulicilla's words cut deep. Even with strength and magic, he could die so easily. He resolves, no matter what, that he will never let that happen again. As he stands there, Lulicilla continues, her voice unwavering. She tells him that no matter what means he has to use, he must survive. Her final thought on the matter is a simple wish. She wants Kuro to continue being the leader of Nightmare. Meanwhile, in a stately office, Guild Master Zoyce gazes out a window, his mind also on the young guild leader. He turns from the window, a document in his hand, his expression troubled. He acknowledges that there is no lie in his feelings, but he foresees a problem if Kuro doesn't continue in his role. He wonders what he should do with this, his formal request held between his fingers. The document is a request for dismissal of the position as guild leader, submitted by Nightmare's own Yashinai Kuro.